Now for today's program. Vered Guttman, a Moment Talk of the Table contributor, specializes in Israeli and Middle Eastern cuisine and is a food writer for Israel's daily newspaper, Haaretz. Her work also has appeared in the Washington Post food section, Slate.com, and NPR. In 2014, Vered cooked for President Obama's Passover Seder at the White House. Please welcome Vered Guttman.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for coming here tonight. I'm so excited to be here and to have another class with Moment Magazine. We're going to talk about Hanukkah, but from a different angle, a slightly different angle than the usual. As you all, I assume, know, we celebrate Hanukkah to remember the Maccabees who defeated the great Greek Syrian army. They released the temple in Jerusalem, where they found a vessel with oil that seemed very little, but somehow was enough for 8 days. So Hanukkah is 8 days, and somehow the conclusion from all this wonderful story is that we need to eat fried food. And, that's fine with me. But there are in some communities, there are other angles to the story of Hanukkah, and that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. But we have a lot of work, so I want to start with the first recipe, which is the Polish or Russian syrniki latkes. These are latkes or pancakes made mainly of cheese, which is, if you look at the history of latkes, they did start, the potato latkes we're so familiar with and love so much, only an invention of since the 19th century, when potatoes became very popular in the Ashkenazi cuisine in all of Europe. Until then, they were made of cheese, like we're going to use today, or buckwheat, or just flour. We're going to talk about it later. So my husband Nathan is behind the camera, and so that's how the camera is going to move so professionally now. So let's go to the mixer here. As I said, I'm going to start with the syrniki latkes / pancakes. These are very popular in Poland and Russia. I'm starting with ricotta cheese. You can mix it by hand. I'm doing it with a stand mixer, but you can just do it by hand. It's not necessary to use the mixer. The original cheese for this recipe is actually the Vered cheese or farmer's cheese. If you can get those, you can use those. If the ricotta cheese that you're using is very watery, you need to put it in a sieve and let it stand for a couple of hours so the water goes out. You have the instructions for that in the recipe as well. So I put cheese in there. I'm adding some flour. Let me mix the eggs here first.
Vered, some people would like to know if there are any vegan cheese options, lactose-free options for people for any of these recipes.
Right. Thank you for asking this. So for this recipe, because the main ingredient is cheese, I think there's no real substitute. Okay, at least I never tried it with vegan cheeses. It may work, but I'm not sure about that, and I don't want just to answer. For some other recipes that we're gonna have tonight, like if we're frying things in butter, you can always do that in oil. We have the pampushki next, which are stuffed potato balls stuffed with feta cheese. That you can definitely do with the vegan cheese available on some stores, a feta style of cheese or any white cheese that you can add salt to, or you can make your own using, nuts or, however you make the vegan cheese. Okay, so I'm gonna add the eggs to the mixture. a little bit of sugar and some salt. And let's mix it. Do you want to show the mixture? We're basically done. Okay, that's it. You don't want to overmix it. Second. This is the mixture. You see, it's not too watery. It's actually nice, and you can see that you can already work with it. But it's better to leave it in the fridge for an hour or so, and up for a few hours. So I'm going to do that. We're going to go back to it at the end of the class, so it will stabilize a little bit in the fridge. Just a second. Okay. I hope you didn't see too much of the mess that's going on there. I'm going to need the bowl soon again. Okay, so, oh, the bowl is in the fridge. Okay, just a second. Can you please transfer it to another bowl? I'm going to need this. So I mentioned earlier that we're going to talk about the tradition of eating cheese on Hanukkah. It has to do with the story of Judith. She was a brave widow, a beautiful widow that lived in the town of Petulia in northern Israel, in the land of Israel, when the Assyrians sent their army to conquer the town, and their general Holofernes sieged the town, held the town in siege, and they started to run out of water, and the Jews in town wanted to surrender to Holofernes' army, but Judith said that she had an idea on what to do, and what she proposed was to go with her maid to meet Holofernes, and that's what she did. She took with her, maybe she took levivot, latkes with her. There are different stories about that. It may have been cheese, very salty cheese. It may have been, according to this 14th century version of the story, she took levivot, latkes in Hebrew, that were made of cheese. She met the general, she offered him the cheese, he really liked her, she was beautiful, he ate the cheese that was salty, so he wanted wine, she gave him wine, he was drunk, and then she cut his head off. So a classic tale. His army freaked out when they saw his beheaded body, and they ran away, and the Jews were saved. And so we eat cheese, but in some communities, some Hasidic communities and some North African communities, they were telling this story during Hanukkah and serving cheese during the holiday because of that. It's, yeah, thank you, I need this. Thanks. And this may bring us actually to the story of, to the way latkes evolved throughout the years. I mentioned it earlier. Okay, I'm gonna peel potatoes as I thought. I mentioned it earlier that, I mean, as you know, potatoes were not really available until America was found and by Europeans. And only really in the 19th century were people in Europe really discovered potatoes and actually started using it regularly. And that's when potato latkes started to become what we know today. Before that, they were a type of latkes that were made of cheese. Probably that started in Sicily. In Eastern Europe, Central Europe, they were making latkes for Hanukkah out of buckwheat, kasha, and flour. And what's interesting about Hanukkah in general and latkes specifically is that Jews were raising geese, not so much chicken, they had geese more than that in their yards. And during Hanukkah, they would make, I don't know if that's if that was the time where they had the most geese, but they were making oil, the fat from the goose. That's what they used the most. It was, it was their version for lard, or for, the fat from pigs that their neighbors used. So they were not only making rendered fat, schmaltz from the geese, they were frying the latkes in it, which sounds wonderful. And they were also making, one day during the holiday or before the holiday, they would clear the whole kitchen and make the fat for Passover. Prepare fat that would be clean from all chametz, from all bread or flour, and keep it from Hanukkah to Passover. That was part of the Hanukkah tradition in Poland. So what I'm going to make now are these Ukrainian potato balls that are stuffed with cheese, and we're gonna fry them. They're delicious. So I hope you're really going to try it at home. What I have here for the dough, you can say, for the potato mixture, I have some mashed potatoes that I prepared earlier, and I'm going to grate these potatoes. Can I have a knife and a cutting board, please? And add it to here. Thank you.
Vered, can you mix everything using a hand mixer if you don't have a stand mixer?
In this for here now, or the other recipe? Because here I'm gonna mix it with my hands, like with a fork or something. I'm gonna use my food processor to grate these. Just because I'm lazy, you can use any large grates grater. So let's move here to the food processor. Again, this is only me being as lazy as ever. Okay. I have the grating disc in here, so I'm not crushing the potatoes. This is the grating disc in there. So easy.
So do you want to just remind everybody what recipe you're working on now, that this is different from the first one?
Right, yes. What I'm working on now are pampushki. These are potato balls that are stuffed with cheese. In this case, we're gonna use feta cheese, and we then fry them in deep oil. We're gonna cover them in egg and in breadcrumbs, and fry them. So I have the mashed potatoes, now the grated potatoes, salt, and black pepper. Can I have the gloves, please? Thank you. And I'm going to use gloves for now.
For those who are following along, this recipe is on page 2 of the recipes that we sent you.
We're going to go back later to recipe number 1 that we just mixed so far and we didn't actually make. So I'm gonna mix the mashed potatoes with the grated potatoes all together, just like that, and make some kind of mixture that I can work with. The mashed potatoes help it hold together. Since we need to make, we need to make balls to shape it as balls and then to fill it. So we need this mixture to hold together. Okay, this is good. Okay, so now in one bowl, I'm gonna put an egg. This is for coating the bowls. I have an egg and a little bit of water. Make it more diluted, and that's it. Okay. And then we're gonna have breadcrumbs on the second bowl.
Is there a reason you need to use both mashed potatoes and shredded? Could you just make this with the mashed potatoes?
It's going to be too dense. And also we're trying to, this is a classic recipe that is still being prepared in Russia and in Poland. And I want to, we want to keep it the traditional way. So to show how it was made by Jews for the holiday, how it's still made in festivals around these countries. So for that reason, I also want to make it the traditional way. I mean, I don't think it's going to be a terrible idea to do it just with mashed potatoes. It will make it maybe closer to knishes. I'm afraid it will be too dense, though. The same way that we do the regular latkes. Some people do it with mashed potatoes. I really prefer to do it only with grated potatoes. It's more crispy, it's nicer, so the same goes in here. I have feta cheese in here that I'm going to mash with a fork, and just for a nice flavor. I always feel like feta works really well with green onion or with chive. So I'm going to add a bit of chive here. Just a second.
Do you have a particular brand of breadcrumbs that you recommend using?
No. But the feta is important, that it's nice. The feta that I'm using is not really feta, because feta needs to be Greek to be real feta. It's it's now part of the of a named dish that can only come from a specific region, like Champagne. Also, the feta that I like is not kosher. But it's the Valbrezzo feta. It's available at Whole Foods. It's available at some Middle Eastern stores. It's French feta. It's made of sheep milk. It's delicious. Okay, so I have the potato mixture. I have the feta, crumbled feta that I mixed with chive, the eggs, lightly beaten egg with water and breadcrumbs. The other thing that I need to prepare is the oil. I have an inch of oil here. I'm going to put it on medium heat. And I actually use a thermometer for this because I want the temperature to be 325, not too hot. I preheated it before we started the class. It takes a few minutes for it, like even up to 10 minutes, for it to be in the right temperature. Here, I'm gonna cover it.
So why don't I go to a few other questions people have?
Sure, but if you don't mind,
Sure.
as you ask the question, let me just start the first pampushki here, or pampushkas in Yiddish. I'll show you one, then I'll be able to continue and do more as I answer the questions. So I'm making this like a ping pong size bowl of the potato. Oopsie, wait, there was a chunk of potato there that I don't want to use. I'm using my thumb, maybe you can show it close. Using my thumb to make a hole in the center, and then I put a little bit of the cheese inside and close it and roll it back to ball. Now I'm going to roll the ball in the egg and then in breadcrumbs, and it's ready. And it's kind of fun. So I'm going to continue doing that, and I'm ready for the questions.
Oh, quite a few people would like to know, even though you're making a traditional dish, if they would prefer not to use feta. Are there other cheeses you would recommend, as well as non-dairy cheeses?
Right. So in this case, because the feta is just for a little flavoring in the center, you can definitely use vegan cheese, store-bought vegan cheese. If there's something that's similar to feta of the vegan cheese, I would go with that. But really, any cheese can work, like grated cheese, mozzarella type of cheese. I'm talking about vegan cheese, right? There's a relatively large variety at this point of vegan cheese, so you can really use anything you like.
And what about other cheeses that are dairy?
That are not that are dairy, but not feta. Mm-hmm. So I think, well, first of all, you can use something like farmer's cheese. That should work nicely. But also you could use like the mozzarella balls, just like with the Italian arancini. So those will melt on the inside, and that can really be nice.
And what about a dry feta? Would that work?
What is a dry feta? Like the Greek style that's drier than what I use, you mean?
Maybe, I'm not sure. If the person
someone asked that?
Yeah.
Right. It's with the feta, it's really a matter of your preference. I'm just putting it on the inside here. It can be any type of feta, even the crumbled feta that you buy in stores, the Greek feta that is definitely more dried than the French feta. That can work too. Whatever feta you like.
And in terms
will work for sure.
In terms of the breadcrumbs, can you use panko crumbs instead? Can you use gluten-free? Can you use wheat?
So you can use the gluten-free ones. You can use whole wheat. Panko will not work as well. It will, the texture will be a bit off comparing to what we want to do. but so I do not recommend panko, but any other type would work.
And
just a second, תשמור לי את זה ואת זה. Yes, yeah.
What about brie? And somebody also said that fat-free feta is very dry.
Oh, I see. I think, I mean, it should still work. The fat-free feta, I think, should work. Brie, I think, will be nice. It's a nice idea.
And then
holiday-like.
Can you make these ahead of time and freeze them? And would you suggest freezing them before you fry or after you fry them?
That's a good question. I'm not sure what to say. I think if you freeze them, you do need to fry them first, because I'm afraid they will, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to say. I think you can do actually either way. Either way may be fine for freezing. But do not thaw them before frying. If you did fry them before and then you freeze them, just reheat them in the oven. If you freeze them raw and you want to fry them, then I think you should do it. I think you should make them smaller than I did if you can, and fry them when they're frozen. It may take a longer time, but still do it this way. Okay, so now if you noticed, I added a little bit more oil because the oil was too hot. If you just want to try the oil and you don't have a thermometer, I would say buy a thermometer. But if you don't, it's not expensive and it's really useful for so many things. But you can try. Can I have the potatoes for a second? You can try frying a little, just a piece of the potatoes and see. You want to see the oil bubbling around it, and then you'll know it's ready. You see, I mean, this is a bit too much. It's frying very abruptly, but I mean, I think we're fine. So, okay. Put a few of them, not too many at once, because we don't want to cool the oil too quickly. So I'm going to do 3 of them.
Do you have a temperature? Do you have a temperature for the oil that you like it to be? Yes,
325. Again, you have it in the recipe that you got. So if you do use a thermometer, you should start at 325, and that should be fine. But it's not rocket science, as they say. It will be fine either way. You just don't want them to brown too quickly or too slow. Like, look at how it bubbles, the oil bubbles around them right now. That's a good sign. I mean, it's not too much, it's not too strong, but it's also not too low. I mean, you want to see some bubbles, but not too much. And you want to give it some time. It's nice if it's a little brown, if it's, of course, cooked through. I mean, to remind you, as opposed to latkes, these are kind of large, you see. So you want them to be cooked all the way through. So you need to give it like 8 minutes or so until it's ready. Yeah, so this is it. Anyone has any other questions?
I know in the recipe you said corn oil, olive oil, or avocado oil. Someone would like to know if you can also use canola oil.
Yes, you can, of course, and vegetable oil. Many people use that. I really like the smell of corn oil for frying. I use that when I fry Iraqi, when I fry eggplant the Iraqi way, and many other things. I know for many people it's, they don't like corn oil, it's inflammatory. So I understand. Avocado oil is very neutral and it's very good for that. And of course, olive oil always tastes wonderful. It's fine to fry in olive oil as long as the oil doesn't burn. If you don't heat it too high, it burns only at 400 degrees, and we use the oil here at 325, so it's fine. It's just that olive oil is expensive, so in this case you may not want to use that. But yeah, you can definitely use canola oil. These start to look really nice. So we just wait a couple of more minutes and they should be ready. So yeah, as I mentioned, these are not latkes, but it reminds us of latkes. It's potatoes, it's fried, we serve it on Hanukkah. But latkes, as I said, started as either cheese, levivot, cheese pancakes, or buckwheat, or flour or mixture of them both, fried in geese oil. And only later in the 19th century, it became the potato latkes that we know. The word leviva, which is the word for latkes in Hebrew, appears in the Bible. And if you are familiar with the story of Amnon and Tamar, yes. Amnon and Tamar, suddenly forgot. Amnon was the son of King David, and Tamar was his half-sister. He liked her, she was beautiful. He asked her to make levivot for him and to bring it to his room. And she did. It was probably back then a wheat type of fried cake. He asked all his servants to leave, and then he raped her. It's a horrible story. Then she asked him if he will marry her to save her from the shame, and he refused. So, it's a horrible story, which, if it leads eventually to a story, to the fact that we associate now Levivot, or the holiday, with the bravery of Judith, then maybe, there's some justice here, but that's a terrible story. That unfortunately we are reminded of when we talk about Levivot. Okay, this looks ready. At least the color is nice. You want to remove as much oil as you can and transfer it to a tray with a few layers of paper towel. That's it. It smells so good. Okay. That's it. And when you serve it, it's nice to serve with sour cream. You open. It's too hot for me to open it right now. I mean, I can try. Okay. You see, you have the cheese inside, and it's so good. It could probably use a few more minutes in the oil, but you can always try one and then see if you want to fry the rest for longer. If it becomes too dark too soon, then you can wait. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
if it becomes too brown, too dark, too soon, reduce the heat. And,
Can you want to show them again one more
give
time? Show them done. They look
the
amazing.
done ones. Yeah, thank you.
And you said you serve them
is-
with sour cream. Is there any other
Yes, yeah.
toppings
No.
you would put with it?
You don't even have to have the topping. I mean, if you want to play with it, I'm sure it will taste good with some Tabasco or even avocado or something like that. But there's no need. It's really tasty like that. I mean, these are really good. What's not to like? Fried potatoes stuffed with cheese. I mean, what's not to like? Okay, I think we're ready for the next recipe. And the next recipe, it's the last one on your list, and that's for sfinge. Sfinge are very popular Northern Africa, Moroccan, Tunisian types of donuts. As you can hear from the word sfinge, it's like a sponge. It's the Greek, it's the name comes from the Greek word for sponge. And, even the Hebrew Israeli sufganiya comes from the same root. So sufganiya, sfinge, sponge, it all comes from the same root. So for this one, we're gonna have to make, to use the mixer again, because we're going to need a real yeast dough. But these are really so much easier than the jelly donuts, the Israeli type of jelly donuts that are a lot of work. These are relatively quick to make, really easy. I'm going to show you in a second. I think I'm going to just fry it in the same oil that we just used for the pampushkas. And let's move here, and we're going to make the dough. So actually, I need the water to be warm. So can you just put warm water, a cup and 3/4? Okay, so now with the mixer, I'm using the dough hook, and I have the flour here. I'm gonna tell you the story behind the story of the Hanukkah tradition of the Tunisian Jews, especially the women. Yeast, I'm using instant yeast and not it's usually the type that you cannot find in the supermarket. You can find it online, the soft instant yeast, and not the active dry yeast. The instant yeast is, you don't need to proof, meaning you don't need to mix it first with water and then let it rise for 10 minutes. So you can skip that step. And it's also usually more reliable. You can use less than the yeast that you buy in the supermarket. Usually the active dry yeast is like 20% dead, so you need to use more. So if you bake a lot, if you make babkas and sufganiyot, just buy it, even if it's a large, usually they sell it by the pound, which is a lot, but it keeps in the fridge forever. So that's what I do. I'm adding a little bit of sugar, and I'll mix it all together briefly. And now we can start mixing. I'm gonna add a little bit of whiskey, just a little bit. It helps when you fry. Thanks to the temperature of evaporation of alcohol. Don't ask me too much about it because I have no idea. Okay, this is too much. No, that's fine. Okay, it's quite a lot of water. Do you want to show this up close? Okay, and salt. Just a second. Oh, the yeast smells so good.
Someone would like to know about the package of yeast you use, the gold or the red.
Again, ask me again. I didn't hear.
The gold. Do you purchase the gold or the red package of the yeast?
Oh, I purchased the red actually, but I should try the gold next time. I can tell you that the red is wonderful. As long as you buy, maybe you can buy even with a friend. So each one of you take half of it, because it's really a lot. I mean, even for me, and I do bake a lot, it's a lot. But for halas, for babkas, it's really the best. Okay, my mixer, that was very expensive. Still, I need to lift the bowl here for it to work well, so I apologize for that. But I have to do it for a second, so it will actually mix. It's not like, first of all, you can look at the dough, you can see that it's very watery, very sticky. That's fine. It's fine for what we're doing in this case.
Vered, it's a little hard to hear you over the mixer.
Oh, okay. I said that the dough is very runny, and that's fine. That's what we want in this case. And also, I'm going to say that we're not going to knead it for more than 4 or 5 minutes. So it's shorter than regular dough for bread. So let me do that for a couple of minutes and I'll get back to you. I will not talk when it's run. But you can show me.
For those who came late, I put a link in the chat to the recipes, and you will also get them after the program.
Okay, let's pretend that I kneaded it enough, because I actually made another batch in advance before the class anyway. So what you want to do is to pour this into a clean bowl that you're going to spray with oil. Let it rise like you would when you make challah or any yeast dough. You let it rise once, you punch it, let it rise the second time, and then you start working with it as I will now, but you can actually even punch it again, let it rise a third time. So, but I did not do it this time. So keep this here for now. So yeah, okay. Here I have the dough that I made in advance. I'll show you. Okay. I have a knife, please.
And I assume
Actually,
if you
I'm
don't
fine.
like whiskey, you could use any kind of alcohol.
Yeah, it's really just 1 tablespoon. You can use any type of alcohol. So you see, this was half the recipe of the dough. So this really rises up. We're gonna use it now near the stove and fry this. And as I wait for the for the oil to be hot again, can I have the wooden spoon? Yes. Thank you. I need the wooden spoon, not for the spoon, but for the stick here. And I'll show you in a second. Okay, I turned on the oil. I wanted to get out again. It's the same oil, which in general I would not recommend because it does have some of the flavor of the pampushki. And now we're gonna make a sweet thing, this sfinge, but it's fine. What I just did is I greased my hands so I can play with the dough and it will not get stick to my hands, hopefully. So I mentioned that this recipe is popular in North Africa, and it's actually popular in many different holidays, including for Moroccans, they make it as part of the Mimouna celebration. It's a celebration the day after Passover ends, where you eat all the chametz at once, and other holidays. But the Tunisian Jews, if I remind you again the story of Judith, they made a special celebration for the women in their communities during Hanukkah, remembering the story of Judith. So on the 7th night of Hanukkah, which is also the Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the month of Tevet, I think, because Hanukkah starts in Kislev, so it should be Tevet. So in the Tunisian communities in general, the first day of the month was a day of a break for the women, which is nice that they get a whole day to rest. But in Hanukkah, even more so, the first day they did not only rest, but they got to have a big celebration. And the women would gather at one houses of the family, and they would sing and cook together and dance and recite poems, and they would get gifts. Like if you're engaged to get married, your fiance will send you, and his family will send the woman jewelry and gifts on the day. The husbands and fathers would go and buy them food also, and they would buy them dairy products. Now, many of the Tunisian Jewish homes did not even have, they kept kosher, but they didn't keep two sets of dishes. They only had the meat dishes and not dairy, because dairy was not very popular, and so they never cooked it at home. But during this holiday, they would buy it from outside and just eat dairy products, and it was something special because it's something that they wouldn't do usually. So that was part of the celebration, and it's called the Festival of Daughters, or the first of the month of the daughters. So this holiday was very popular while the community was still in Tunisia, and then was kind of forgotten throughout the years in Israel. But in the last 10, 15 years, some feminist organizations in Israel started to discovered it again and started to celebrate it again. And not only for Tunisian women, but also for other women in the community. And it's nice. I mean, I think we can all adopt it and at least mention it on the 7th night, at least. Okay, the temperature now here is 340. That's fine. Again, you can always test the temperature of the oil by putting a little piece of dough inside and see how much the oil bubbles around it, and then you decide how much you like it or not. So these are a bit complicated to make, so maybe show it here from close by. My hands are greased, so I can play with this sticky dough without it sticking to my hands so much. So I make this ball, and then I use my thumbs to make a hole in the center, and I stretch it a little bit. And now I can put it in the water. Once I do that, in the oil, sorry. Once I do that, I take this stick. You can use a chopstick, you can use just this, and mix it a little bit so the hole is not closing on itself. So that's how you make it. Okay, let me do another one. And you see the dough, I did not deflate the dough. I kept it up or rising. Okay, again, oops. I'll push this in the center, mix.
Someone would like to know if you made the dough at night, could you put it in the refrigerator to rise overnight?
Definitely, yes. Just make sure that you, that you wrap it really well with plastic wrap, because the fridge does dry things up. And if you don't, it will dry and it will not rise. But as long as you wrap it really well, it's going to work perfectly fine. Another trick that Tunisian women do is they also pour oil on the top. It's not really necessary, but you can do it. And this is a nice color. It's almost ready already. I'll just make another one.
And while frying is traditional, could these be baked?
Oh, that's the biggest question of Hanukkah, right? Not really, because look how, look at the dough when I play with it. It's so difficult to handle it that I can't imagine a way to really keep the shape enough that I'll be able to bake it. So, while you can always fry donuts, bake donuts, excuse me, this type, because of this very runny dough, it's not going to work so well. Okay, I'm going to take these out. This one seems ready. Let's see. Okay, a couple more minutes and we're done. So as you can see, it's it's true that you need to let it rise again and again, but really mixing it, frying it, it's no big deal. It's relatively quick. Once you get the hang of it and how to do it, it's really easy, and they go so fast that it's really nice to have it at least one night of the holiday and surprise your guests. And we're not done with it yet, because we are now going to dip these in sugar. I have just regular sugar in here, and I just dip it a couple of times, and just like that. And that's it.
Because you're using the sugar, does that mean you don't recommend using the paper towels like you did in the first recipe?
Right, it's not really necessary in this case. For some reason, they stay also, it's almost like they do not drip oil. But if you fry a lot of them, you can still use the paper towel first. But I'm not sure what it is about this dough, but it doesn't absorb a lot of the oil. So here we go. It's so good when you eat it freshly fried like that. It's amazing. Any questions about that?
No, they look amazing. They look
Thank
amazing.
you.
And I'm guessing, they would be good with drizzled jam or chocolate or cinnamon, sugar.
Of course, yes, yeah. But again, I mean, if yes to all of that, all of them. But the traditional way we eat it plain, I mean, there's something so good about them like that. And the taste is very mild, gentle, and it's nice. And, it's really nice. Of course, you add chocolate to anything, it's going to be wonderful. So our last thing is to finish the first recipe, the original cheese latkes that started this whole story of Judith and started our class. I'm gonna bring it out now and we can fry it. Let me just move this the oil. So, okay. So this is the batter that I mixed earlier using ricotta. It's been in the fridge for like an hour or so, 45 minutes, and it's ready. We're ready to fry it. So let's go here. Here you can keep that. So here I'm gonna fry it with, let me spray first. It's so slippery that I can't use it. I'm gonna spray a little bit, but I really wanna use a mixture of olive oil and a little bit of butter, just because I can, and it's so tasty with butter. You can also use just oil if you prefer, that's completely fine. I have a plate here, ready latkes. Let's wait a little bit for the butter and oil to be hot. Okay, and now this is so similar to pancakes, so you know there's no real rules on the size or even the shape. And the dough is very easy to use, so you know you can shape it after you put it in the pan. Let's make another one.
So you use a lot less oil or butter than if you were frying something else, like a regular potato.
Right, definitely. And you can really treat these like almost like pancakes, right? I mean, they are kind of what they are. But so it makes these very tasty when you use the butter, but you could really even use less than what I put in here. I like reading all these stories about latkes, you know, the wheat and buckwheat latkes from a Polish tradition, fried in the geese schmaltz and just dripping of oil. So of schmaltz. So, you know, I mean, it's a once a year kind of thing. So we can celebrate the oil, even if it's really schmaltz. So that's it. I'm waiting now for these to be goldy, really gold, not brown, but golden. Then I'll clip them and then we'll serve them. I'll show you in a second, but does anyone have any other question?
Yeah, about both for this and for the Moroccan donuts, about how long do you think it takes on each side to fry up?
So the sfinge, the Moroccan donuts, they're like 1 to 2 minutes for a side, but you'll see it, they're very thin. So as soon as they become golden brownish, light golden brown, you flip them and that's it. It will be ready on the inside. This also, I would say 2 minutes maybe. But as always, it depends on many things, on how hot the pan was when you started, how strong your burner is, etc. So
Also, someone wanted to know for the sfinge donut, is
yeah,
it really best to be eaten immediately? Can
definitely.
leftovers be eaten a few days later and still taste good?
It will taste good, but and we did eat that in the past, but I'm telling you, eating it immediately is the best. What you can do is just fry. You can make the whole batch of dough, use what you want, and put it back in the fridge. Keep it covered well, as I mentioned earlier, and fry the next day. Fry more of the dough. It's better than frying all at once, because as you could see, and you can keep the oil from one day to another for a few days if you're doing it for a few days over Hanukkah. So it will be nicer to fry it immediately. It doesn't take more than a few minutes to make, a dozen of them. And it is more special, to eat it immediately, if possible. If not, you can always put them on a baking sheet and put them in the oven on 325 for a few minutes until they feel warm, and that should be fine too.
For folks who joined us a few minutes late, this recipe is the first one of the recipes. Vered started it at the beginning of the program and put the dough in the refrigerator while she was cooking the other recipes.
That's right. Okay, so now these look ready. I'm gonna transfer them to my plate here. And again, do you remember how much oil and butter I had in the pan? It really absorbed all of it, unfortunately for us. And now what you can do, what you traditionally do, is you sprinkle it with some powdered sugar, just like that. And the most delicious thing is really to eat it with these amarena cherries. It just works so well with these. So you can buy them now at Trader Joe's. I'm gonna put them on the side here, but you can also drizzle all over. Or you can also use any jam that you like, or make your own cherry syrup. But this really makes it so delicious. That's it. Here are all our recipes. You may notice that the pampushki that I opened earlier disappeared. Thank you, Nathan. Was it good? It was excellent, he says. So yeah, my job is done here. If anyone has any questions, then please.
What was the name of the cherries you just mentioned from Trader Joe's?
These are the amarena cherries. This is the Trader Joe's version, which was only $5 for this jar. They usually like the Italian or the Spanish. I think Italian version, the original one, is very expensive. So that's a nice thing to buy this time of the year. They don't always have it, and it's really good. But you can really use any fruit syrup, any fruit jam on it. You can make your own. If you go to my website, veredguttman.com, you'll find this recipe for the syrniki, and you'll find the recipe for a cherry syrup that you can make yourself. So it's easier, and they're actually good with no fruit at all. So you can also use fresh fruit or berries. of course.
Well, Vered, thank you so much. As one of our
My pleasure.
one of our viewers, they wrote all these recipes look so yummy and so easy to do. I think everyone has a lot of new recipes that they're going to try this year that they haven't made. Thank you so much for making them and showing us how to do it. I want to remind everybody to go to momentmag.com where you can find these recipes on our website. I've put them in the chat a few times, and I'll send out a follow-up email in a few days that will have these recipes as well. I'm also going to suggest send us a message on Facebook or an email at Moment Live, and we'll share people's pictures of the recipes that they have made. I know Vered will probably very much like to see those. Also at momentmag.com, please register for next week's program, A Musical Journey in Search of Iraqi Jewish Roots. Again, thank you, Vered. Thank you, Natan, for being our video cameraman, and we will see everybody next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.